Hey, Southeast Missouri sports fans. Enjoy the show and want to take it on the go? You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or YouTube. Tune in as they air by searching SEMO Sports Zone wherever you may be listening. Welcome to the SEMO Sports Zone presented by A-Corp Sports. You're listening to this on Monday, February 17th. Dave, how are we doing today?
I'm doing just fine. Survived Valentine's Day, and now we're just trying to dry off from all this rain and try to avoid some of the snow that's in the forecast.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed driving down here, but pretty much half of Southeast Missouri is underwater right now.
Yeah, definitely. My backyard, for one. Some of my basement, apparently, as I found out. So that's never fun.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's been rough. Hopefully this winter weather kind of ceases. We're supposed to be getting a lot in the next couple of days, but we're going to see how that turns out when it comes to our local games around here. All right, you want to start getting to Thursday games?
Let's do it.
Okay, first game I've got on the listing is Southland versus Risco, 60-68.
Well, I got the close game I wanted. Mm-hmm. That was not the way I wanted it, but at the same time, we got a good close game. Southland filled that gym. They had a lot of excitement. And again, I went back and I looked through a lot of the old, some of the old Southland stuff, and really in like the last 20 years, they'd only won before this tournament, only won two games coming into this tournament, and made the semifinals twice. So this is their first time in a championship in a long time, if ever. And they had a lot of excitement, and it was unfortunate that Risco was missing some of their better players. Obviously they had three starters out due to disciplinary reasons, I guess, from the little scuffle. And but Risco was able to survive it, and I think that's a good win for Risco to know that you can win this game without some of your best players, and still get to and kind of some guys, if they ever get in foul trouble or something like that, you've got guys that know that they can step up and fill those roles for a short time if needed. Absolutely,
and I think also for Risco at this point, you don't know what that morale situation had to have been like after that fight with Clarkton. And frankly, calling that a fight,
it's not a fight.
It just wasn't really that much of one.
Yeah.
But going into it, getting those suspensions. I mean, what's your morale like in that locker room? How does Coach Blankenship, rally those kids? And I think he did a great job. I think what it also shows you is like you said, once you get into districts, I mean, you've got a good team, like from feet to head at this point. And because missing three starters, I mean, that's three starters and three of your major scorers. I mean, that's a hard blow for any team. And,
absolutely.
For a Class 1 team that doesn't have that many options when it comes to who's on the bench.
Yeah, they only had five.
now being shown is okay, you've got a team that can win. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways Risco has to take from this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Playing with five and still pulling that off. Just a good win for Risco, and a good, that district that they're in, pretty much the equivalent to this Tri-County tournament. I mean, basically it is a Tri-County tournament, and that's a good showing for them, and just so we'll see how that plan that plays out here in the next couple of weeks, but just a good win for Risco for sure.
Yeah, and you don't want to say we'll talk about it all the time. You don't know how a game's going to go until it's played, but for Risco, you basically got to play your district tournament again, and so I think this time, I'm not going to say they're going to roll completely. I don't want to say that and jinx myself or the team, but at the same time, they're heavily favored to win this district out.
Yeah, heavy favorite. That's the way to put that, because they are, and we'll see. Southland Gideon, they're the Gideon's a 2 and Southland a 3. It's going to be at Gideon, so it'll be a flip this time. So that Southland Gideon game may be a pretty good indication of a home court advantage there. Maybe Gideon's favorite in this one, but Southland, just kudos to them. I mean, as well, because that was a good performance from them, and really a lot of excitement in that school when they've not had much basketball success in my lifetime for sure.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Greenville versus Bernie. So this game was supposed to be Campbell versus Bernie. Unfortunately, Campbell could not play that game, and Greenville stepped in, and really kudos to them for that 11th hour stand-in. We didn't find out about the switch until probably that morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really not time to prepare and everything. And our thoughts are with Campbell and their situation there. But great job from Greenville stepping in and playing. And, Bernie with a great game. John Aycock had 40, and he just continues to get better and better every time I see him. He's just every time I see him, he improves, just a little bit more. I can't wait to see him as he's a junior and senior. But this Bernie team just had a little bit more than Gideon or Greenville. They really kind of pulled away in the second half. Greenville played them tough for a while, and just Bernie just had too much at the end. But and that's kind of what you thought this game would go whenever I saw that it was going to happen. But again, kudos to Greenville for coming over and playing. They're not a bad team at all.
No.
And so just a really nice win for Bernie.
Yeah, and, like you said, John Aycock scoring 40 points on the night, awesome to see. At the same time, I want the rest of his teammates to kind of step up and, kind of branch out that kind of horizon level on, what this team's, baseline point is. And I think in the future, especially in these upcoming 2 years, I think we're definitely going to see that, just that, that less of a divide between teammates. But, for one to stand out in this game especially, it's you show us what you got, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You want Hopgood and Smothers to step up, consistently, not just here and there. You want them to be consistent scorers for them, and I think they will be as they get older. I mean, this is a good group of sophomores that they have, and it's going to be fun watching them over the next few years. Yeah,
Hopgood being that kind of clutch 3-point shooter when they need him to. Blaine Morgan playing point guard. Will just throw himself into everything. And you got to admire that passion. So, yeah, like you said, just these sophomores coming into their own, knowing their positions, everything like that. I think they're going to be a threat to any team starting next year.
Yeah, they're going to be really good.
Moving on, I've got Malden versus Bloomfield, 48-62. Now, I think the key point on this game is Grasser. Wow. What a showing from him. 13 3-points in the game, setting a school record and tying for 5th place in the state of Missouri all time.
Yeah, we've been wondering where their second scoring's been. They've had Underwood all year, and all of a sudden here Grasser hits these 13 threes. I mean, that's impressive. Just a heck of a game from him. Shout out to him in that game. But where's it been all year? I guess Malden kind of zoned him up and kind of sunk it in and let him shoot a little bit. But maybe they shouldn't have done that, because apparently he made him pay, and that's a heck of a performance from a kid from Bloomfield there, and just a really nice job. So shout out to him, and hopefully we see some more threes from him as this goes on, because you give them a second scorer like that, they would be consistent. That makes them a little bit more formidable.
Absolutely, and I think for the school, I mean, obviously you're going to be jazzed about that you get to say, hey, we broke one of our records. Mm-hmm. And then, for Coach Sindel, I mean, hey, must have been an awesome feeling for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just for the whole team. I mean, usually when you have a guy go off like that, the whole team just loves it.
Oh,
and I'm sure they were trying to feed him late, because, I mean, when someone's hot like that, you try to get them the ball as much as possible.
I mean, in this era of basketball, too, where 3-pointers are probably the most explosive thing that people get excited about, hey, must have been a great time for that kid.
Oh, absolutely.
Next game I've got on the listing, pretty surprising game, actually. Richland versus Delta, 56-60.
Delta's just been creeping along. We've not been paying much attention to them, but they win some games here and there. They're a little bit above 500. Coach Heeb does a really nice job with them, and then I kind of thought that Richland might have a little bit of issues with them. I was kind of anxious to see how they played, and I didn't really expect them to lose this game. But Delta kind of a wake up and look at us moment for them, because they're in that district. They're the number 2 seed behind Richland, and they've got Richland's attention for sure.
Absolutely, and I think for the most part, we've been sleeping on Delta a little bit. They just, like you said, flying under the radar, things like that. I didn't really take notice of them until saw them in the Scott Miss tournament playing against Kelly. Played a very close game against Kelly, and now, I'd say they're on everybody's radar. Definitely on Richland's radar, especially going into that Class 1 District 2 tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Just seems like something's just really not clicking with Richland, but when it does click, it looks good, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But man, they just sometimes it just seems like things are just not what they need to be there.
Yeah, and I don't know what the separation is. I mean,
I don't know either. It's it's just strange because maybe I only saw them play their good games last year, and maybe I missed some of the games that they had where they didn't look great last year. But I thought they looked better last year with the same crew, and this year it just seems like stuff isn't clicking at times. And but all it has to do is start clicking right at districts, and all it takes is just a little juice to give them some confidence and start rolling for them. So maybe that'll happen here in the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to some Friday games. We got South Iron versus Crothersville, and in that game, 76-66.
South Iron is really good. I was able to watch this game, and I was really impressed with South Iron. A lot of people don't know the story down there, but I know they lost their center to a knee injury. He's out for the season. Two other kids have moved away that they got some playing time, I believe, for them. And then they have a guy named Sawyer Huff. He scored 36 in this game, and he's kind of he's somebody who his father died over the summer, kind of tragically, and he just he overcomes adversity, and he is just plays amazingly hard and can get to the rim. He's a really, really nice player, about 6'3", just a tough player, and he's got a good supporting cast around him. That's a very good Class 2 team. That, just a little bit out of our area. We don't talk about them enough. We talked about them a little bit when Neelyville beat them. Kind of a surprise that Neelyville beat them, and so we talked about that. But for the most part, we don't talk about them much. But that's a very good Class 2 basketball team, and I thought Crothersville played pretty well. They started their seniors to start the game, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it just seemed like they kind of fell behind early, and South Iron just never let them, come back and take the lead. So kudos to South Iron. And again, Crothersville didn't play poorly. It was just South Iron was just a better team that night. So hats off to them.
Yeah, and for Crothersville, I mean, what do you take away from this game moving into districts?
Just another tough game. They've played a really tough schedule. We liken them to Charleston sometimes, and just that they play a really tough schedule. It's hard to kind of measure what they play against some other teams that are going to be in their district, just because they don't play a lot of the same teams. And but they've really tested themselves. Iron sharpens iron sometimes, and that's kind of what we always say with Crothersville and Charleston, to see if they, they're a good team that plays some tough teams. They're not bad losses; they're just some losses, and so we don't know how they're going to measure up against an East Prairie, but it'll be fun to see.
Yeah, and like you said, we liken them to Charleston just because of that. They don't play all these teams that are typically in their district. I mean, for Charleston, it's a very different situation going from Class 3 to Class 2. It's definitely an adjustment, but playing that hard schedule, that's kind of what we expect from them, is to play these difficult games at the start of the season, then kind of shape yourself up for districts. That remains to be seen if that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, against East Prairie, I mean, I don't know how Crothersville is going to stack up against them.
Yeah,
I mean, there's not too many common opponents that we can really pick and choose from to say, oh, well, they played against them like this. How are they going to play like that? And we just don't have that. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, this is definitely a loss that Crothersville is going to have to take to heart, and kind of what can we fix? That's where I see it as.
Right, and you just learn from these, and it's only I believe the second loss they've had since Christmas. I mean, it's not like they've got a lot of these, and sometimes that's good for the coaches because they can kind of use that as some motivation going on forward here for the last week of the regular season. But you don't know how it measures up, but I will say that I was very impressed with South Iron. I didn't think Crothersville played poorly. I think it was just South Iron was a really good team. Crothersville, they weren't hitting some of their shots, but South Iron was kind of the reason for some of that, and their defense, and just a really nice game overall for both teams.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. Moving on, let's talk about Kennett and Dexter. Ended that game 60-68.
Yeah, really nice game Dexter trailed most of the game, playing without Turnbow. They were still able to get, kind of make a run there late and send it into overtime, and then double overtime, and then in the double overtime kind of pulled away. They hit their free throws. They did what they needed to do to win. Ibrahim played well in overtimes. I think he had 11 points in the game. I think he had 8 of that was in overtime. I mean, he played really well in overtimes. Geatley had a huge night. I think he had 7 threes. And they, Temple's really wasn't hitting, so they really needed that from Geatley. So it was a big win for Dexter, probably get the 2 seed in that district now. If you're Dexter, I think you want Kennett to be that on the other side of that bracket. I don't think you want them to be.
Absolutely.
You don't want to see them a third time because that'll be tough. But, Kennett Watson looked good again, and Ty Jones had a really nice game. He missed a runner just right at the end of overtime that would have won it for Kennett, but he had a really nice game too. So they're kind of finding another score to go along with Dyson Watson, and so I like what Kennett's doing as well. Is just Dexter just did what they needed to do to win.
Yeah, what's kind of do you think this is an implication game for that Class 4 District 1 tournament?
It's an implication. I think that'll put the Dexter at the 2 seed, and then you've got Fredericktown and Kennett with about the same record, right around the 500 mark. It's going to be at Fredericktown. Maybe Fredericktown gets that 3 seed. Maybe Kennett does. I don't know. It just depends on how the coaches go with that. But I think that's one of those where I think this solidifies Dexter as a number 2 seed, and that's big because you get that first round bye.
Yeah,
and then you hope that you get a winnable game in that semifinal, so you can challenge probably Notre Dame in that championship game. But that's a wide open district. I mean, obviously Notre Dame is the favorite, but it wouldn't shock me to see if Dexter or Kennett were to come out of that district, that wouldn't be shocking.
And what's kind of like the main takeaway you think for both Kennett and Dexter this season? Because an improvement obviously, but what's like those big sticking points that going into next season, those are the things you have to work on.
Yeah, I really like Dexter. Both teams, I think that, like you said, improvements over last year. Dexter, for Dexter, they've got a lot of underclassmen, only one senior on the roster. So for them, it's just to continuing to improve. You got to learn how to, handle the ball a little bit better. I know that they're probably going to get some help off of the JV, maybe even a freshman coming up next year that might help them some. But you want to handle the ball a little bit better. And you want for Dexter, we've talked about, I don't know how many times, you've got to, make some of those shots right around the rim that you missed this year. And that's just learning points there that I think that they'll continue to improve. For Kennett, they're going to lose some seniors, like Dyson Watson and I believe Gilmore and some other ones. That are going to be some key losses. So they're going to have to replace those guys. But I think this has been a big year for them, just building up some of the confidence that they've kind of lost over the last few years when they've struggled. Especially
for what's been kind of just a feel it out, learn year. I think Coach McBroom, I don't think he's going to be dissatisfied with how this season's gone at all. Just the takeaways he's had to make and, just everything like that. I mean, going into next season, obviously you're going to have to replace those scorers, things that you're losing. But I think it's an upturn for Kennett. Yeah, I agree. That's a definite upturn, and just watching them on the floor, you can just see that they're a much better team than they have been the last couple of years, and that's a proud program down there that's had a lot of success in the last 15 years or so, and so a couple down years, you want them to get that turned around, and it looks like they're in that process now. You're going to have to replace some really good players after this season, but Coach McBroom's a good coach, and he'll coach them up. You've seen that this year, just how much he's improved them, and he'll just continue to get them to improve. Absolutely. All right, moving on. Cape Central versus Sykeston, 44-63. Man, this Sykeston just didn't play well early in this game. A lot of that's due to that Cape Central defense that kind of frustrates them a little bit, slows them down. But I didn't think neither team shot the ball very well. But it was just I thought the first half Sykeston just kind of seemed really sluggish. Second half they picked it up a little bit. You had PJ Farmer step up. He always fills the scorebook. 25 points from him. I think PJ Farmer and Cole Deck are the two best players in Southeast Missouri. I think PJ, he does not just scores, but he's going to put in some. He's going to get your rebounds and assists, and he's a great team leader. And of course, you look at Cole Deck, who just does the same thing. They're just both just tremendous players. But PJ does a really nice job. He kind of stepped up in that second half, and they just played well. But at the same time, they didn't play well like I want them to see them play. I really thought that they would come out fired up in this game like they did against Charleston. It just didn't happen, and some of that's due to Cape, but at the same time, I just didn't think Cape had the offense just to stick with them in the second half. Yeah, and I think one of the biggest just kind of sticking points to me is that Trey Sadler wasn't really implemented that much during this game. I don't know if that's more just like what kind of the day was, what the play style was, but I feel like getting him more involved in the offense especially would have kind of set a tone early on. Yeah, I need to see more from Trace. I mean, he has big games, like he had 21 against Charleston. I want to see more of that. Sometimes he can just float around and not have a big impact on the game. And at 7 foot, and he needs to be more involved in that
and make a bigger impact in some of these games, especially some of these bigger games. SEMO saw something in him, obviously, to give him a scholarship, and you can't really, you need to use him as 7 foot. Somehow he's got to be involved, and I just want to see more of those 21-point games, and not necessarily just with the scoring, but so the rebounding and blocks as well. I need to see more of that from him. I think for them to make a run in this Class 5, I think you're going to have a lot more from Trace.
And I will say this too. Sykeston did implement him in a way that, kept Cape on their toes. You could see him in the backcourt just kind of like lingering there. Like you always know that lob and alley-oop are like always in that threshold of just like that could happen. Keep a guy on him always. And, Cape did that. They kept him like kind of locked down in that position. Do I think defensively that would have worked if they really wanted to use Trace in the way that they typically do? Maybe not. He's got the size that can kind of take on anybody, but
yeah, he's really just not a back to the basket type guy. And so he'll float around the baseline a little bit looking for those alley oops and things. And if you can kind of take that away, I think you can kind of keep him offensively. He does run the floor very well. If he gets out, you get out in a fast break, he's going to get more points in that way. And that's where the Charleston game, I think, it feeds into him a little bit because he's just really not a back to the basket type guy. But I would love to see him get the ball in the post some and do some post moves because at 7 foot, he's a tough matchup with anybody.
Absolutely. I think the difference is, what Sykeston did against Charleston. That's a state team to me. What they did against Cape Central,
not seeing it.
Yeah, so,
I agree. I agree.
Once that consistency's there, I think that's the biggest thing is like raise your consistency. Play every game like you're playing Charleston at this point. Going forward, you've got some tough competition if you get out of districts.
Yeah, and districts is going to be tough in itself with Farmington, and you could see this Cape team again. This Cape team's already shown you that they can frustrate you a little bit. And again, I just don't think Cape's got the offense to stick with the Sykeston, but at the same time, it's only one game, and if Sykeston's really off or something, they could pull an upset there. But Sykeston's got Farmington, and then like you said, a lot of tough opponents if they get out of that district.
Yeah, and I think for Lamont Frazier too, with this Cape Central team, you can kind of already see like the culture shift and the change of like to this more defensive oriented play style. And I think once you get some scores that can kind of like offset that just a little bit, I think they're going to be a great team. It's nice to see them, being able to change their tempo when needed.
Yeah, it's good to see them buy into the defensive because a lot of teams are not going to buy into that, especially in the way the game's played today. Coach Frazier's done a nice job with them, and again, he's instilling his program, so we'll see how they build this thing up over the next couple of years. But yeah, he's got to find some scores.
Next game on the list, I've got Woodland versus Charleston, 69-82.
This was a really nice game. It was a really fun game to watch. It was close all the way through. The score was a little bit out, a little bit more than what the game was. But, it was tied at 59 after 3. Woodland led 66-61. And then Charleston ended the game on a 21-3 run. And they just do what Charleston does. They got after them defensively, kind of forced some turnovers from Woodland, forced some bad shots from Woodland. And, Charleston took advantage. They made some shots and got out in transition and just made the plays when they needed to. And that's just what Charleston does. And I thought both teams played really well. It was just that Charleston was a better team on that night. And I think both of these teams are playing well as they head into the district tournament. I believe Woodland's a little bit tougher than what we saw a few weeks ago against Puxico in the Stoddard County tournament. They played right with this Charleston team and was tough right to the end. And so I like what I'm seeing out of both these teams.
Which I was going to ask, too, do you think Woodland's kind of back in form as we saw them kind of earlier in the season?
Yeah, I may have overestimated their form a little bit early in the year, but at the same time, I think they're playing pretty well right now. McCormick's back. I think he's a big player for them, does a lot of the little things, gets the rebounds, and does some of the work inside that they kind of miss whenever he's not with them. But, at the same time, I think they're playing pretty well. Obviously they've taken some losses here in the last few weeks, but they played some good competition. The game against Kennett is kind of still confounding to me. I really thought they were better than Kennett, but at the same time, pretty much all these other games, they played close. They played well. And so we'll see how that translates into district. They got the top seed in that district, so the coaches think a lot of them, and I still think they're a really good basketball team, and I think they're playing pretty well right now.
They have a chance to prove themselves too, because Tuesday, if that game happens, barring any weather conditions, they're playing Puxico again.
Yeah, and that could be a really good game. I mean, I would expect Puxico to come out and probably win that game. I just don't expect the margin that they won it by the first time. I think that I would be shocked if it was another turbo clock game. I just think that Woodland, they got punched in the mouth, and I don't think they were ready for that in the Stoddard County tournament. So I'm sure that Woodland's probably going to be fired up coming in playing this. Like I said, if the game does happen, I would assume that Woodland kind of felt embarrassed after that game, and there was a lot of talk about how much better Puxico was than them. So I would think that they would come in fired up too. So I expect a good game. I think Puxico's the better team there, but at the same time, I expect a lot better game than what we saw the first time.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that later, just when we get to upcoming games. But for Charleston, what do you think this kind of means for them?
Charleston's they're just playing well. It's again, you don't see a lot of they play a lot of tough teams, so it's kind of tough to judge how they're going to do in Class 2. You like to think that they're going to do well because they played all these tough teams, and we'll find out. But for them, it's just continue to win, continue to play these this good competition, and try to get better as you play them. And then when you get to districts, you see what happens.
Yeah, and I think my biggest takeaway too is just like you said, Charleston plays a tough schedule. And I think about that loss to Sykeston, how drastic of a loss that is. That's not going to happen every time.
No, and again, I've said it many times. The Charleston Sykeston is just a different beast, and it's either going to be really close or it's just going to be a big blowout. Mm-hmm. And it's happened many times that way. And Charleston just got behind early and just never could catch up. And Sykeston, when they smell blood, especially in a game like Charleston, we said they weren't up against Cape Central, but they will always get up to play at Charleston. And Sykeston can just really get after you. And when they get rolling, they'll just steamroll you. And it kind of happened in that game, and it's happened a few years in a row now for this Charleston team. So that wasn't super surprising, and I kind of take that game as an outlier. I think these other games that they play, they're playing really close. They're playing really good teams. And they're winning a lot of, they won quite a few games. They're right around 500. So, I mean, with that schedule that they play, I'd be interested to see what some of these other teams play with that, what their record would be with that same schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for Charleston, too, you got to consider every loss they take. I feel like they just come back more fired up about it. So, winning against Woodland, I think, like you said, the biggest takeaway I would take note is that 23-1 run.
Yeah.
Because that's one of those things where it's like, okay, they should be put away. And if they can come back like by that margin, what's that mean for every other team in the area that has to play them?
Yeah, when they get rolling, they can be really good. And you don't want to, if you're Charleston coaching staff, I'm sure you don't want to wait till the last 3 minutes of the game to kind of go on that 21-3 run. But at the same time, you don't want to, you want to have that run, but you'd love them to do it earlier in the game and kind of take some of the stress off. But yeah, they did kind of put that game away late and just doing what Charleston does and doing it with their athletic ability, their defense, really getting after you and forcing Woodland into some situations that they didn't want to be in.
Next game I got on the list, East Prairie versus Kelly, ended that game 86-60.
East Prairie just taking care of business. They're a Scott Miss game. They just kind of rolled through it. They're playing well right now. They are. Johnson kind of got going in the second half. Markham again in the first half. We're big fans of Markham and Johnson. I mean, they're good players, and so just a really nice game from them, and they just continue to play well. Kelly is actually playing a little bit better than they were earlier in the year, even though they got beat pretty good this game. They're playing a lot better, but at the same time, I think East Prairie just taking care of their business. Yeah,
I think for East Prairie too. I mean, I've said this multiple times. Every time they lose, they seem to go on a run right afterwards of just like, all right, okay, let's build back up, and Great for right now. You do not want to do that in districts because
you don't want to lose again. Right now, I think your losing time's done because you don't want to lose anymore now. So they're you got to be peaking at district time. They're going to have a tough district, Crowsville in there. We already talked a little bit about that. So they need to be playing as well as they can, and I think they're doing that right now.
Yeah, I think they're very well aware of their situation and kind of what assets they have and how they need to play their game to continue winning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next game I've got on the listing is Perryville and Scott City, 54-97.
Scott City, same thing as East Prairie, just taking care of business. They're just doing doing what they need to do. A Perryville team, it's not a terrible team, but they just, took it to them. And Perryville likes to get the ball up and down the court. And Scott City said, okay, we'll do that, and we'll score a bunch of points against you. So, they're just doing what they need to do. They're a very good team, and it's really looking like it's setting up between them and Woodland, a rematch in that district championship.
Yeah, and I think you kind of have to put all these teams on notice. Scott City, I mean, that's your number one typically. And I can't really disagree with it sometimes, just because they look like the most complete team as far as everything they do. What I think for them and for every Class 3 team kind of has to be put on notice is, you got to bring your best, like once you get out of districts, especially in sectionals, things like that, just because Principia is just kind of like lingering in the distance.
Yeah, have fun with that. Principia is a very good team, but I can remember back in the mid-'90s, Cardinal Ritter had a team with Lauren Woods on it, 7-footer. He played college basketball at Arizona, played some in the NBA, and then you had Chris Carrawell, who played at Duke, he played some in the NBA on that team. Just a team stacked with talent. And Portageville went up there and beat them with Coach Bidwell. It was a great game plan, and they were able to beat them. So those games are winnable, but you just got to get there. And so, if you're Scott City or Woodland or any of those teams in Class 3, you just kind of dial in and win your district, and then worry about those other teams as they come along. But you can't just look at those games as like they're not winnable, because they can be. It's just it takes a really special game and a really special game plan and to do it. And first thing you got to do is you got to get through that district, and then you have that daunting Principia team up in the future.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's what you play the game for at that point. Moving on, I've got Twin Rivers versus Puxico. Ended that game 36-77.
And Puxico did what Puxico needed to do. And we talked about this was not this Puxico team is a very good team. And I know I love giving the Puxico fans a little business and poking the bear a little bit. But at the same time, this Puxico team, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, they're a very, very good basketball team. I really like them, and they're just doing exactly what they need to do. They rolled through this tournament. They were the heavy favorites. And we said that the only story about this is if they didn't roll through this tournament. And they did exactly what they were supposed to do. They're playing very well right now. On paper, they're they would be the pick to win that district with Charleston and Bernie, and those are two teams that are going to be very good. I mean, Bernie could very easily knock off Charleston, but Puxico on paper is the best team in that district, and so we'll see how it all plays out as we get into that tournament, because they've got to play the games. But Puxico doing everything they need to do right now, playing very, very well.
Absolutely, and the strides they're making as a team, I feel like they're finally hitting that all gas, no brakes, and that's what I've been expecting to see. For this tournament especially, I mean, you got to hand it to this town and this team. Like, this is 3 tournaments they've won in this season, and I don't think they've ever done that before.
Yeah, I mean, unless it happened back in the 50s with Arnold Ryan, I can't remember, and I'm not old enough to remember that. But, I mean, as far as from the last 30 years, 40 years, I mean, it's definitely the best that they've had as far as tournament-wise, and they're primed for the district tournament and to make a run there. So, and like you said, they're all gas, no brakes now. They're playing very well. It seemed like that Woodland game was like a turning point for them. And I said it then, if they play like they did against Woodland in the district tournament, there's nobody going to beat them. But if they play like that, and because that was a very good basketball team that played there, and they just continued to play well after that. And that's kind of been the turning point in their season. They kind of struggled to me a little bit. They didn't look great, leading into that, but since then they've looked the part that we kind of expected them all year long.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest takeaway is that they're performing like the team that their town wants them to be, and I think that's going to be the difference maker. We can't call them the out and out winner of everything. We still have to see them play against in that whoever they're going to end up playing against in that Class 2 District 3, but at this point, we can say they are heavily favored to win that.
Yeah, they're definitely favored for sure.
All right, let's move to some Saturday games. South Pemscott versus Doniphan.
Yeah, I didn't get any eyes on this, but I know that I saw the score, and I mean that's a good win for South Pem. South Pem, they've kind of been struggling a little bit. They had lost on Friday night, so they were coming off a loss on Friday to an Arkansas team, and come in here and were able to get the win against Doniphan. But so a good win for them. Again, I didn't get any eyes on it, so I don't know. I just know that I think they played over in Poplar Bluff.
Okay, interesting. I mean, for Class 2 District 1, that hasn't been seeded yet, has it?
I've not seen any seeds. As we record this on Sunday, I've not seen the seeds for the Class 2 District 1 or the Class 3 District 1. So it'll be interesting to see how that seeds out. I mean, I would think probably Hayti 1, Campbell 2, maybe, but again, I don't know. I've not seen it, and I don't know how that's going to be a tough tournament.
Yeah, and I think most people are looking at Hayti and Campbell as just being kind of those two teams that are most favored to meet each other again. But at the same time, I'm not going to count South Pemmican out of anything.
Absolutely not. And if Campbell and South Penn were to play again, they've played a few times already. I don't want to. If I'm Campbell, I don't want to play South Penn again because that's a tough matchup, and they've played some tough games already. But you're going to have to. I mean, that's going to be a brutal district anyway. So whoever you're going to get in that semifinal is going to be tough, whether it's South Penn or Campbell or any of those teams. So whoever you get in there, it's going to be tough.
Well, speaking of Class 2 District 1 and kind of keeping it within that kind of family right there, Hayti versus Richland ended that game 60-64.
And this was a big win for Richland, and we just talked about them a minute ago. They haven't been looking great. They haven't looked like they've been clicking. Well, they clicked this game, and they looked really good. I mean, Hayti had a lead. I think they led by as much as 11 in the first half, and they were still. Richland was able to come back and win this game. They were down 2, like with about a minute left in the game or so, and they just made the plays down the stretch. A huge block by Tucker Hughes on Jonte Payne going in with about 10, 12 seconds left. And then, then a big steal to seal the game from Connor, with about 3 seconds left. So they did it defensively. Tilly hit some big shots. I mean, it was just a very good win for them, a good team effort. Like everybody played a part in it. And that's kind of what we've been expecting to see from Richland all year. And man, I would love to see them carry that on into districts, because this is a very good basketball team when they're clicking like that.
Absolutely. And you talk about teams that are just hard to put away. And I think for the season, like if you consider that to be like one big game, Richland's that team that's just, you can't put them away.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the game against Delta, and I'm like, "Oh, Richland's got some problems." And then here you go, 2 days later, and they beat Hayti. I was like, "Oh, Richland looks really good." I mean, it's just, you cannot count out this Richland team, and they have that ability to go on a big run here. If things start clicking for them and they start playing really well, they can be a very good basketball team. So, we'll see what this last week holds before districts and then districts, because that's good. That districts looks a lot tougher than what it did, back a couple of months ago, and
even a week ago.
Yeah, even a week ago. With Delta in there, Delta the 2 seed, you got Leopold the 4, Bell City the 3. I mean, so there's some tough teams in there. Some teams that have got played Richland tough. So we'll see how it plays out. But if Richland's clicking like they did against Hayti, I don't see anybody in that district beating them.
No, I can agree with you there. Want to get to some upcoming games? Did I miss anything?
No, I think so. I think we got it all.
So Monday, you've got Delta taking on Bernie.
And again, it's kind of so Delta, like I said, been flying under the radar. Well, we'll see what they got against Bernie, because Bernie's very similar to Richland. I think that Delta is a team that we haven't been paying a lot of attention to, and I think it's time that we kind of start. We'll see what they do going in and playing against Bernie. I would think that Bernie would be the favorite here, playing at home. I think that Bernie, for me, I think they've just been a tick above Richland this year. But at the same time, this Delta team's shown that they can play. That they can play with these type teams. So I'll be interested to see how they play. And for Bernie, it's just another game that's going to be pretty tough and just kind of build you up toward that district tournament. Yeah,
and it's hard to gauge what teams are going to be like until they actually play. But you got to look at like kind of the pedigree of where every team's at. Bernie lost to Hayti. Delta beat Richland. Hayti lost to Richland. Where does that put Bernie at? Yeah, just a lot of degrees of separation there, and a lot of comparing scores and everything. And that's tough to do whenever you got 16, 17-year-old kids and you don't know what they're going to do from night to night. But at the same time, it is interesting because it's like, well, I mean, can this Delta team beat Bernie? And I think this Delta team, has the ability to beat Bernie for sure. But Bernie's playing pretty well right now. I like what I've been seeing from both of these teams. So I think this ought to be a good game and a good measuring stick for both teams. Yeah, and I think for Bernie, kind of just use this as another game to kind of like figure out your scheming a little bit more. I mean, that Class 2 District 3 tournament, that's going to be tough. So, I'm not going to say they're going to take a loss in this game, but at the same time, I feel like this is the time to, just shore up those things that, Coach Long might be thinking like, okay, this is something we can fix in a game. Yeah, absolutely. And then moving on, we've got Leopold versus Charleston. Yeah, this is a game I want to see Charleston just come out and just take this game from the start and roll with it. And, Leopold, they've got some good players. They're a team that can cause
Charleston some problems, but if Charleston's playing as well as I like to think they are, if Charleston's a team that's going to give Puxico or Bernie some issues in that district tournament, I want to see them. I want to see them put a team to get away here. I don't want to see them, kind of play with their food against Leopold and be like a 5 to 10 point game. I want to see them come out and dominate this game. If you're Leopold, this is a good game to help get you ready for districts, because you're not going to see anybody in your district that's as good as this Charleston team. So you try to get. It's just a good measuring stick. You know what you have in front of you in districts with, you'll probably see Richland in the semifinals. That's a game that I'm sure that they want to play again after what happened the first time. So, I think for both of these teams, you're just kind of preparing yourself for your district tournament. Yeah,
I think for Richland watching this game, I think that's going to be the biggest thing, because you're still kind of Leopold's kind of a question mark for you. You didn't get to play them at full strength, whatever the situation was, whatever. So, to see them play Charleston, I mean, you are going to get a bigger kind of window into okay, what's our district actually look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can kind of see, because you would think that Leopold's going to come into this game and give you all they've got. If you're, they know they're probably underdogs going in there against the Charleston team. So, they're going to, try to give it all they got. So you'll see what they have. And, I would assume that Leopold's not going to leave anything in the tank here. They're going to try to go after them. You got a week before districts. So, just see what they have. But if you're Charleston, don't mess around. Just go out there and take care of business. And because man, if this is a 5-10 point game, then my thoughts of Charleston are probably not what I thought they were.
Yeah. And I think for both teams at this point too, you got to think about, like you said, districts being a week out, just end that game, both staying healthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Tuesday, we've got Dexter versus Poplar Bluff.
This is a game that I wish both teams were healthy. I mean, they played a really nice game in the SEMO Conference tournament. Poplar Bluff pulled it away at the end, but at the same time, I think that Dexter needs to get Turnbow back. I really think he brings them a lot of energy, and they're a better team with him. They've won some games without him, but I really think they're better with him. And for Poplar Bluff, they're just the walking wounded right now. They're just really struggling with trying to get guys healthy, and some of their main guys are out. So if those guys aren't playing, I like Dexter in this game, even with it being over on Poplar Bluff. But if some of those guys play, that may change my opinion. But Dexter, I think, just needs to continue to keep winning here, keep building up toward this district that they've got coming up, and get you another SEMO Conference win.
Yeah.
You get another SEMO Conference win, you're probably in the middle of the pack there. So, I mean, and you got New Mattard supposedly on Thursday. So, I mean, if you're Dexter, you can get a couple of SEMO Conference wins here and be, like I said, right in the middle of the pack to maybe the top half here, depending on how things fall with Notre Dame the next week.
Absolutely. And we were already talked about just the improvements that Dexter's made this year and what they're most likely going to start doing next year. I think this is a kind of a solid way to start to end off your season.
It is. And, they played some tough games in the past. They played a tough game just a couple of months ago. So I expect it to be a good team, a good game with some teams that they have struggled at times this year. But I think Dexter's really kind of, playing well as of late. I mean, really since the loss to Puxico in the Stoddard County tournament, I think their only loss has been to Sykeston, and that's understandable. And so, I mean, other than that, they've been playing pretty well. So we just continue to play well here and work toward districts and get healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then next up, we've got Bernie versus Richland.
Yeah, that's a game that Bernie. I'm really anxious to see how Bernie and Richland match up. At Richland, it's a tough game. Richland plays well at home. We've talked about that. And
I've seen them beat Dexter at home.
Yeah, beat Dexter at home, beat Hayti at home. They play well at home. And so this will be a tough test for Bernie. And again, Bernie's going to be coming off a game the night before. So we'll see how they match up, and hopefully they play this game, because this is usually a good game anyway between these two teams. So a really nice way to kind of end the year for these two, and a good rivalry game. And I expect this to be a really good basketball game.
Yeah, and we've already kind of talked about what we expect from Bernie going into this week, what implications are going to be for that Class 2 District 3 tournament. But I think this is just another way to I don't really even want to say get a litmus test on what your competition is going to be. But some of these teams have played Richland, and so it's just going to be another game that you have to continue to improve and stay healthy on.
Yeah, you want these tough games late, just for different scenarios. If nothing else, you want to, if it's a close game, then you want, I want to see, how we handle this or how we handle that, so if these games are close and they're tough games, that's good because that helps you as you get to that district, tournament and you just build off that and it helps coaches and it helps players get confidence and that's just, and it works for both of these teams. I think both of these teams can take something from this game. And like I said, it's a good rivalry game. These two schools are really close and in miles and stuff. And so it's going to be a really nice game. I think a good atmosphere.
Absolutely. Probably one of the biggest highlights of the week, Woodland versus Puxico.
Yeah, the first time they played, I was a little higher on Woodland than probably I should have been, and Puxico wasn't playing the greatest, and so I was a little bit lower on them. I think now it's kind of flipped. I think Puxico is the favorite in this game. I don't think it's going to be a turbo clock game like it was in the Stoddard County tournament. I would assume that Woodland's going to come fired up and going to be and going to play this game and play it pretty tough. But at the same time, I expect Puxico to kind of win this game, maybe 8 to 10 points, 12 points. I think that they take care of business, and because they're playing really well right now, and if they win by 15 or 20, that wouldn't surprise me either. I think that this is just one of those games that Puxico is playing really well right now. It's kind of more of a testament for Woodland. How do they respond to getting punched in the mouth by Puxico the first time, getting kind of embarrassed the first time by Puxico? How do they come out of this game or come into this game, and what's their mindset, and how do they come out playing?
Yeah, I think exactly to your point. I think this is more of an implication for Woodland rather than Puxico at this point. Just because, Puxico, the prestige of winning Stoddard County in regular season as well as the tournament itself, that's what you're playing for. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, for Woodland, like you said, that how do you deal with the adversity that you've faced, especially towards this later half of the season? It's just it's been a tough go for you. So to come back and kind of play the team that I think gave you the biggest black eye in the season, that's going to be tough. And I hope Woodland comes out and plays kind of the more tougher ball they've been playing the past couple weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you don't want to come out and have the same thing happen if you're Woodland for sure, because that's just not going to be good for your confidence. It's not going to be good for anything for them. If you're Woodland, you need to come out and see how they come out and play. I'm going to be very anxious to see how this plays out. And because, I think Woodland's a better team than they showed in that Stoddard County tournament. So I want to see them come out and play better.
Yeah. And I think for Puxico at this point, advantage is on your side. You've got a great team. On paper, they're probably one of the best teams in the area, if not the best. And then, you've got your crowd behind you. It's at home. You've got that home field advantage. It's just, it's all in your favor.
Yeah. And, it's just a good game for them. I think it's just be a good game for both of these teams. And hopefully it's an exciting game and it's a game that's not a big blowout. It's not kind of a letdown like the first time. I want to see a good competitive basketball game. And like I said, I think Puxico's the better team here. After watching them play the first time, obviously it'd be hard not to see that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I want to see a better showing from Woodland as well.
Absolutely. Moving on, I've got Charleston versus Cape Central.
I think this is a good game too. I think I like Charleston in this game just because I think they can score a little bit more than Cape Central. I think they're going to, Cape Central guards you very well, but I think Charleston's a team that can kind of take them on the dribble a little bit and use their athletic ability to get to the rim and cause Cape Central some problems in their defense, similar to what Sykeston did at times. I think that, if Charleston just sits outside and tries to shoot threes, I think that's going to be a big problem. I think Cape Central has the advantage then, but I think it's going to be a tough game. I think it's going to be a hard-fought game. I think both these teams play very hard, but I think in the end, Charleston may just have a little bit too much offense. But, if you tell me Cape Central wins this game by 12, it wouldn't shock me either.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest difference is how is Charleston going to compete with Cape Central's defense. That's going to be the biggest sticking point. And honestly, the more I think about it, I think this is a great game to kind of get you prepared to play in that Class 2 District 3, just because you're playing against defense that, typically you might not come up against. And I think playing another defensive team that's really going to kind of hold your offense, see what kind of things you can work on with that. I think this is a good game for Charleston at this point.
Yeah, because if you play Puxico is going to play a man-to-man against you, just like Cape Central is going to do, and they're going to get after you and guard you really well. For my money, they're probably Cape Central and Puxico is probably two of the best defensive teams in Southeast Missouri. I mean, honestly, as far as man-to-man defense goes, for sure. And so it'd be interesting to see how Charleston plays Cape Central. I think that's going to be good for that. So, I think that's, so assuming Charleston would get past Bernie, who I'm sure Bernie's going to probably play a zone against them and make them beat them from outside. So there's going to be two different ways,
different styles
that Charleston may see in that district tournament. So it'll be interesting to see how they play against this Cape Central team, and we'll see how that plays out. But I think I think these two teams match up very well. I think they're going to play really, really hard. It's going to be a tough physical game, and we'll see who comes out of it.
And then my last game on my listing is Farmington versus Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's a Farmington Notre Dame. I mean, Farmington's a very good basketball team. We've talked about them a little bit when they played Sykes, and I haven't talked about them a lot since, but they just continue to win, continue to play well. I mean, I think they're a better team than Notre Dame. It comes down to Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not an easy place to play. So, I mean, Notre Dame's going to have that home court advantage. And, it's kind of a smaller gym. Notre Dame fans get after you a little bit. So it'll be kind of interesting to see. But I think Farmington should take care of business here and just continue to make their move toward this district tournament where seems like they're on a collision course with Sykeston again.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway is that, for Sykeston, they're probably going to be watching this game saying like, okay, is Farmington still as good as they were when we played them the last time? Because, that's probably who you're going to meet up in Class 5 District 1.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Dave, that's all I got on my list for upcoming games.
Hayti Risco.
Oh, yeah, of course.
We're going to have that on A-Corp,
that's right,
assuming
that's right.
the weather handles. Unfortunately, they won't have any fans there, which is very unfortunate, but I think it's going to be a really good basketball game.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the most disappointing aspect is that there's not going to be any fans. And I'm wondering how that's going to change the game because I think, for both these teams, as well as they might play, I think that fan aspect is what drives a lot of teams forward a little bit. So to play this completely off of the physical, athletic attributes of your players, I mean, you're going to get the most, numbers game possible, but at the same time, you're losing an aspect out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be more like a summer game or one of the COVID games, it's just because a lot of these teams, they kind of feed off, you see these teams feed off the crowd and whenever that crowd gets excited, then they kind of start playing up a little bit. You won't have that in this game. I mean, Risco playing at home, they'll have the advantage a little bit because, they're going to they're going to know their backdrops and things. So, but it's still going to be awkward for both teams and it's going to be awkward for you guys doing the game on A-Corp. It's just going to be just because it's a different feel, and you kind of want this game to have a lot of fans. Unfortunately, we won't have that, but I still think it's going to be a really good game. I'm anxious to see how Risco matches up with Haty's athletic ability and Haty, man, when they can get going, I mean, you really get going and hitting their shots, they are a tough team to beat. I think that's going to be key for them is just hitting some of their outside shots, especially early, to get them that confidence to get rolling. And I think so I think that's kind of the keys to that game. But I think it's going to be a very fun game. It's going to be an interesting game to see now, especially without fans there, just how it plays out.
Yeah, and I think the biggest takeaway for Risco too is just Richland beat Hayti, and barring anything wacky happening in districts, I mean that's probably who you're going to end up playing against is Richland Risco. That's the matchup we keep hearing about, and this is going to be another good test for this Risco team of just how do you stack up against competition that Richland's already played?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, Hayti playing probably the two best Class 1 teams, back to back, here. That's kind of interesting. And so it is a good kind of litmus test, although they did just play each other. Risco, beat Richland by 10, but again, they beat them by 10 last year in the regular season, then up losing to them in district. So, it's just going to be interesting to see. I just want everybody to stay healthy in this game. I don't want any twisted ankles or anything like that. I just want a good game, up tempo. I expect to see a lot of points scored in this game, and I'll be interested to see how it plays out and who has the most offense at the end.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, for Risco, you got some rested starters.
That's true. That is true. Some of your scorers haven't played in a while.
Yeah, so we'll just have to see how that game goes.
Absolutely.
All right, Dave. Anything else?
No, just I want this snow to stay away so we can have some of these games that could impact a lot of stuff coming up here in this last week. And if we get what we're supposed to get, that could have a big impact, not just on our podcast, but on the on quite a few games on Tuesday, Wednesday, and probably into Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for listening to the SEMO Sports Zone, and we'll catch you Thursday if we can. If not, we'll see you when we see you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks for listening.